Greetings, lovelies. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com. Thanks for tuning in. We are concluding today the final segment of my interview with Lee Snyderman, and she's going to talk to us about how you can get registered for her free summit for those of us with chronic illness about going from survive to thrive. So you will want to stay tuned to learn about that, as well as see the details in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for that information. Here we go, the final segment with Lee Snyderman. So, you have created a summit. Tell us about that.
The origin for me is that, like many of you who've lived with illness for a long period of time, it can be difficult, and I find that I have challenges that remain even after 12 years. My challenges are continuing to connect, create, and find community, especially while homebound, and with limited energy.
Absolutely.
Those factors all come together to kind of create this, struggle of what does creating look like. Is, my world stage is not me getting up in front of people. It's ironic that we have a pandemic now, because there's something to be said about the fact that many of us who've lived with illness, sheltering is not new. This isolation, this being in place, and in fact, we could probably use our skills to help others cope because we've dealt with this, for so long. It also gives others a little appreciation and understanding for what some of us have been going through on a day-to-day basis, I think. Yeah. All of that said, it's hard to create and maintain community while homebound. So I wanted to find ways, one, that I could continue to do these things. So I said before, my story is persevering through the darkness of dermatomyositis through creativity. The other part of my story is also becoming a muse and a light in the darkness. And that was sort of why my book had that title, A Light in the Darkness. Well, with that in mind, I asked myself, how can I continue to be a light to others? So how do I continue to inspire and encourage others to survive and thrive? That's really, my question. And I wanted to focus on the community that I'm most close and, that's closest to my heart, which is the chronic illness community. People like me who face similar challenges, to inspire, and encourage them. And I want to use my gifts from living through DM and to be able to inspire others. That's the origin of my summit. It actually, and nobody knows this, it was going to be a documentary. So I had mentioned briefly that I interviewed 45 different artists who created to heal from all around the world. This happened in 2018. And I shared their stories and their art through video conversations, which I called Conversations on Creating to Heal. And I also produced a live event with local artists. And I also launched my book. And the reason I'm mentioning this trifecta is because all of this stuff happened that propelled me onto the next step of my path, which is that, my heart is with people living with chronic illness, and that is where I want to focus. It also was a really big wake-up call. So you might relate to this, where I was saying that we forget sometimes to care for ourselves, attend to our self-needs when we're in the throes of creativity. For me, that resulted in another flare of my disease. So just after the book launch and the conversations, the videos, and the producing of the event, my body quit. And I've been homebound for about a year and a half, and I'd been receiving infusions monthly, 5 days a month at the hospital, to improve my stamina, strength, and energy. So the reason I mentioned that is because I also needed to think of ways that I could do this. I didn't want to give up on creativity. That was not my answer. But I needed to figure out how I was going to do this without getting another flare.
Sustainably, yeah.
Right? So for me, it was about the process first, before I talk about the actual content of the summit. It was the process. I had to say, I live with illness, and this is sometimes what creating looks like, right? So I put limits on myself. Number one, I changed my documentary. That was going to cost way too much money and too much of my time, and not enable me to do things outside the house. Like I wasn't going to be able to go film. It would have been more like a Jennifer Bray, unsick thing than what I may have, envisioned. First, that was, changing the documentary to a summit and thinking about how I actually could get the word out and impact the most people. So that was that. And then I said, I'm only going to do approximately 10 interviews a month. And that will force me. The last time I did 45 interviews in 3 months. And so I was having back-to-back interviews in the days and just not allowing my body to rest.
Sure.
So, it's about putting the realistic limitations and putting it a timeline of a year. So I started the project in July. I know some people who, have this model or template of summits. It's like 3 months for the whole thing, recording, putting it together, and putting it out there. And that's just not me. And I also wanted very strongly to be able to make this accessible to anybody who wanted the information. So I'm making it free entirely and also accessible, meaning that I'm not going to take the videos down. They're going to be available. So you don't have to have I need to watch everything in, 48 hours and then pay for it model.
I'm struck by how creative your problem solving was to realigning your vision to honor what was happening for your body, being in a relapse of a relapsing remitting disease. And I'm also struck by what a great model this is for self-care. I'm always looking for my teachers in everyday life, whether it's on TV or from my friends or from the people I'm interviewing. And this is a beautiful example of teaching in terms of just, this is something I want to do. And the way that I thought I was going to do it is outside the scope of what my body can manage. How can I realign the vision with what's possible for my energy right now? And so I celebrate that with you. And I thank you for the teaching that it is for me about things can still be in the scope. I just need to realign the how. So
I love that. I love that you acknowledge, but also that you can see that for yourself. And for me, the other place that shows up is it's about dreams. So in other words, I don't look at it as my dreams have to die. I just think of new ways, either think of new dreams or think of new ways to achieve them.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
So let's get
now
into
let's talk
it.
about the summit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us what the summit is. And let's start there. Tell us what the summit is. We know that what it's called, but tell us what we're doing in the summit.
Yeah. So my idea here, and we've been talking about it in the theme of our conversation, is how do we go from surviving to thriving? And I can kind of speak to this creativity aspect when I was thinking about this. But really, I needed to interview people who are, in the trenches, so to speak. So I interviewed 60 experts.
Wow.
And anybody from medical professionals, mental health professionals, to alternative practitioners, to artists who battle illness, to online support communities, to spiritual teachers and healers.
The idea of from survive to thrive. I mean, is it sort of the theme of the interviews?
I kind of didn't have that exact wording when I did them.
That's all right.
That's okay. Yeah. My theme is how to thrive with chronic illness and limited energy. So for the most part, what I'm trying to get from them is their stories, their direct experience. A lot of them actually have, if I were to sum up the biggest things, like for everybody, it's sort of like I had a struggle. I discovered a way to overcome that. I changed something, and now I share, that, or I started a new practice, or I do something to help other people. It's sort of that whole growth, pattern that happens for people, because out of struggle comes knowledge and experience and wisdom, right? So all of that is what I'm trying to get in the interviews. It's basically a stories, and then how that transformation happened, and what kinds of practices can people watching take away. So I
Beautiful.
always ask that every single interview was, everybody watching, okay, we've got people with limited energy, can they do this? Or, you know, if somebody is an artist, how can they actually do that? Or if a podcaster, I actually interviewed some podcasters and said, what kinds of recommendations do you have for people who want to do what you're doing? So that
Beautiful.
I liked, because it also hopefully gives inspiration to people who are saying, I want to do that, you know. And for others who are medical types and alternative practitioners and the like, then, you know, a lot on diet and nutrition. And as you imagine, there's going to be things from, you know, gluten is Satan to, oh, gluten isn't the problem. Really what we need to think about is, right? So it's really interesting to get the wide variety of perspectives, and sometimes can, you know, give you more things that to think about. But I think in general, it was, you know, a great experience to do all these interviews. So the
What a
summit is,
gift. How long are the interviews in general?
yeah, 30 to 40 minutes.
And you said that it is free to participate. How do people participate?
Yes. So the other, can I say one more thing about the summit, and then I'll
Absolutely.
tell how people
Yes.
participate. So the other aspect of the summit that was important to me was, in addition to conversations, video conversations, was also making this a little different. So I have two Q&A speaker panels that are going to be live. And so each, if we say that the thing is broken up into 2 weeks, it goes from July 10th to July 24th. And I chose July 10th because that's actually Chronic Illness Awareness Day. And 7 out of 10 people live with illness, so they made it on 7/10. So I chose that day as the kickoff for the summit, just incidentally.
Yeah.
So during the summit, there's sort of 2 weeks. And what I did is sort of take the first week, and I'm going to have a speaker panel for that week, and then the second week and a speaker panel for that. So you'll get anywhere from, you know, 10 to 20 speakers that'll
Meaning
be
that the
on
speaker panels will be live. People can participate
live.
live for those
Yes.
versus the interviews that are taped. People can watch.
Yes. Right. And then there's also a Facebook group where people are going to be able to interact and participate before, during, and after the summit, but during. So I'm going to actually bring some special presentations to the group, and also daily have, you know, questions and conversations about the theme of that day. So I think, you know, that'll be
Wow.
fun. And how to participate is just go to the site. It's called How to Thrive with Chronic Illness.heysummit.com. And I'm sure you'll provide a link.
That'll
But
be
in
in the
general,
notes. That'll
yes,
be in the notes wherever you are watching or listening to this. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And then I'll also give the Facebook group link as well. So I would love for you to join the Facebook group and join the summit. Again, it's free. You can watch as little or as many of the videos and participate how you like. There's also going to be a live drama therapy workshop, so that there's a little taste of some of the, you know, creative outpourings that's happening.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So having facilitated all of these interviews, I'm going to ask you an impossible question, Lise, which is, what were some new awarenesses or ahas or takeaways for you?
Yeah. Well, the biggest one is what I was mentioning earlier, where I said, can I just spit this out now? For myself, number one, it's that I thought I was creating this whole summit for you, and that I was learning so much about my own perspectives and thoughts and impressions about what wellness and well-being and health and thriving meant for me. I didn't really give that a whole lot of thought, to be honest. I thought that immersing myself in creativity and surrounding myself with the people who love me and support and giving back, that's thriving. I didn't realize that those missing pieces were that I was focusing so much on the physical elements
Mm,
that I didn't think about what wellness meant. So the reason I'm saying that's an aha for me from these is because I now think of things as a balance of my mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional quadrants, so to speak. If you think of us as quadrants that we're comprised of, those pieces, and to be able to understand that wellness and what wellness means for me, nurturing all of those, and thinking about the balance between those, not just overly putting my emphasis on my physical.
Yeah.
And creating, I'm sure, spoke to the spiritual and the emotional and the mental. I'm not saying it didn't, but I didn't understand that, I really needed to focus. Like the strategies that I'm learning for mindfulness or meditation, or even, here's a great example. Because of COVID, I made the hard decision to stop receiving my IVIG, which is gamma globulin infusions. And you dealing with a myositis probably know that treatment well. For people who don't, it's a pretty intense treatment where I'm in the hospital 5 days each month. And the trade-off for me was the risk with COVID right now. Despite everybody saying there's precautions, taking good precautions. I'm in California, I'm in the Bay Area. It's a hot spot. And I just didn't want to do that undue risk. Okay, the reason I mention all this is because when I stopped it, I then said, okay, it's on me to continue to think about how I'm going to maintain and manage, in addition to the physical part, meaning I'm still taking my prednisone, I'm still going to take my medical treatment, but I need to think of things. So I actually took one of the people that I interviewed, a functional nutritionist, and I followed up and I made an appointment, and now I am changing things. Like I did a sugar reset. And I have supplements that I wasn't taking before. I'm making changes to my diet and nutrition as a result of what happened in the summit. So like I said, these are not just takeaways like theoreticals. I'm putting them into practice.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's a big aha. It's like, oh, this isn't,
theory. It's not just theory. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, Lise, I just can't thank you enough for spending this time with me and my viewers and listeners. And I have to say that you are a light, you are a beacon, and I'm so grateful for the ways that you are changing the conversation. And I'm looking forward personally to the summit. And I am so excited that my audience will also know about participating.
Thank you. And, as final parting, obviously it would be great to share with anybody that you think is going to benefit. That's first. But more importantly, just continue to find ways to keep your dreams alive. Despite pandemics and world strife and loss and grief, all of these things happening, you can continue to be a light and shine your light,
Thank you for that. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you, folks.
It's okay. You can go from surviving to thriving.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. And thank you for joining us, folks. Until we are together again, thank you for your time and attention. I am grateful for you being here. And until we're together again, be well.